The following program is being brought to you on the Voice America Variety Channel. For more information about our network and to check out additional show hosts and topics of interest, please visit voiceamericavariety.com. The Voice America Talk Radio Network is the worldwide leader in live Internet talk radio. Visit voiceamerica.com. The views and ideas expressed on the following program are strictly those of the hosts or guests and do not necessarily reflect the views and ideas held by the Voice America Talk Radio Network, its staff, and management.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Relationship Radio with your host, Jim Duzak. Are you interested in marriage, divorce, midlife dating? Keep it tuned right here for the next hour as Jim and his guest explore some fascinating and important topics. Now, here's your host, Jim Duzak.
Hello, and welcome to Relationship Radio. I'm Jim Duzak. I'm a divorce lawyer and mediator, a columnist for ConnectionsForWomen.com and BoomerLiving.com, and the author of the book Midlife Divorce and the Rebirth of Commitment. At one time, I even owned a dating service. You can learn more about me if you'd like by visiting my website, www.attorneyatlove.com. That's spelled ATTORNEYATLOVE.com. This is not a call-in show, but I do love to hear from listeners. So if you have a question, a comment, or a suggestion, please email me at jim@attorneyatlove.com, and I'll do my best to get back to you the same day. My guest today is Dr. Nancy Kalish. Dr. Kalish is a psychology professor with an interesting sideline. For the past 16 years, she's been researching and writing about people who reunite with lost lovers from their past. She's written books on the subject, Lost and Found Lovers and the Lost Love Chronicles. She's the founder of the organization Lost and Found Lovers, www.lostlovers.com. And she's been on dozens and dozens of national and international radio and TV shows, including the Oprah Winfrey Show, Montel Williams, National Public Radio, CNN, the BBC, and the list goes on and on. Dr. Kalish has a Ph.D. from the City University of New York and has taught psychology at Monmouth University in New Jersey and Loyola University of Chicago. She currently teaches at the California State University, Sacramento. Dr. Kalish, welcome to Relationship Radio.
It's a pleasure to be with you.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you, Dr. Kalish. You know, I was mentioning the extensive media coverage you and your project have received over the years. That really says a lot about the public's interest in this subject, doesn't it?
Yes, and when I started, it was amazing to me that there was all this interest in the media already. It was always on these talk shows. There were pictures in the newspaper of elder couples who got back together. So I
saw one just in the paper here this morning in Tucson.
Really?
It never ends, it seems. Yeah.
And yet when I looked for research on it, there was nothing there. So it's all through popular culture, but there was nothing there. There were no books. There were no articles. Mm-hmm. Now, it's a little more in people's consciousness because of the Internet. But it's always been around. People have a fascination of getting lost loves back.
Well, it's a subject that most of us can relate to, isn't it? I certainly can. I'm not saying that I necessarily have done it, but I certainly, in my idle moments, I'm wondering what, cute Barbara that I remember from the Latin class in 11th grade is doing these days, and that kind of thing. And even if people don't actually go to the next step or the step beyond that, it's something that, I think that most people indulge in at some point, right?
Well, it's interesting that you would say that because when I did the research, no, actually. I looked at 1,600 people worldwide who had never tried a reunion, and I asked them the same kinds of questions about their first love as I asked the people who reunited. And the answers were quite different. These were people who broke up because they weren't getting along or because they put other, and then they checked physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse. These people were done with that lost love. And I think when you go out there and you talk about the lost love experience, most people don't have it and don't understand why anybody would want to go back.
So you could say this is a gross overgeneralization, but there's good lost love and bad lost love.
Well, there's ex-boyfriends and girlfriends, and I'd put those in one category. And then, some people have this intense lost love experience of what might have been, what could have been, what should have been.
This research that you're talking about, this goes way back to the early 1990s, is that right?
Yeah, I started it in the fall of 1993, and the first thing I had to do was put together a survey, a questionnaire, which would have been much harder had I not tried this myself. And having tried a reunion, it was easier for me to pick questions that might be interesting and relevant.
I see. So how did you find these people? Is this a random sampling of people, or was some sort of a self-selected group that came to you?
Well, it's self-selected in the sense that these people have tried the reunions. It's not a random sample that should divide in half and you go back to your lost love. But if you do surveys on male versus female, that's not a random sample either, or race. So there's a long history of looking at groups like this. I started finding the people with the media, and I started with paid ads. I'm sorry, I live near a park, and I'm allergic to it.
That's fine.
So I put a $300 ad in one paper and a $600 ad in a larger paper, and I was getting maybe 20 people.
You didn't know ahead of time if you get one person or 1,000 persons of people that would respond.
I wanted 65. That's what I needed for significance. 65 people, and at first I never thought I'd get there. But Lisa ran an 800 number across the screen, and my mom called because she was watching the show. I wasn't. Hurry up, look at the TV. They're looking for people about this lost love topic. So I called them, and I said, I'm not a couple, but I'm doing research on this. And 4 days later, they put me on the show.
Boy, that's really something. And how many people initially did participate in your first research project?
I cut it off at 1,001 and published it. Wow. So from the Lisa show, I got 50, and that was free and that was fun. And so I continued that way, and after a while, the media just rolled. So with the 2 Associated Press releases that went around the world, that was all that I needed, really.
Oh, yeah. It's sort of an embarrassment of riches, you might say. Economists speak of problems of wealth and problems of scarcity, and you might call it a problem of wealth back then, at least in terms of numbers.
Once it got rolling, yes.
Yeah. What kinds of things did you learn from the initial research project? Or what were your findings? 1001? Yes.
Well, a lot of things surprised me. One thing that surprised me was that a lot of these reunions were so successful. I didn't expect that. At that point, there were about 72% of these reunions that stayed together. Now, I'll come back to what's happening now in a minute. It's different. But that's what it was then. And I was also surprised at how long these initial romances lasted. Because when we talk about teenagers, and when I teach adolescent psychology, we usually think of teen romance, a couple months. And these people who reunited had long romances. They dated somebody a year and a half, 3 years. In some cases, they were actually engaged to this person. And in a few cases, they were actually married to that person and then divorced. So that was a surprise. The age of the sample was surprising because I think if you asked a random person on the street, what is this all about, they'd tell you maybe midlife crisis, nostalgia, looking back at your life. And I found that it wasn't a midlife thing at all. My sample went from 18 to 95 years old.
95?
Yeah, they reunited on her 95th birthday. They were married on her 95th birthday after they were apart for 75 years.
That's really an amazing story.
That's a happy story.
Yeah, that's one for the books.
Yeah.
Boy.
And she wrote me a very nice card because I sent her a book, and she said, thank you for getting the word out there that romance is not just for young people.
So I think you said 72% of the 1,001 people or whatever it was that
stayed together. Yeah.
And so there was, at least as of the time they reported, they answered your questionnaire.
Yep.
They were still together.
Yes.
Some meaningful sense, not necessarily married or living together, but they had rekindled their romance.
Yes, they consider themselves together. Now, I didn't go back and survey these people because many of them, if not most, were anonymous.
Oh, I see.
They didn't have to submit their name, and that's why I got so many surveys back, I believe.
I was going to ask you, I think you may have answered my question, but I was going to ask you, did you hear from both, did you ever have cases where you heard from both sides of the couple, so to speak? In other words, was the guy saying the same thing as the woman, or, you know what I mean?
Not that I know of. Mm-hmm. There were a couple cases where somebody this was in the days where you had to snail mail it in an envelope. They put two surveys in the envelope, and they would label one his and hers. And I used the first one that came out of the envelope, and that's it.
I see.
Now, when people contact me, I often will talk to both of them. Mm. And they're not the same. They're absolutely not the same.
I see.
They're so different that in one case, the woman was telling me how when her child was a year old, he died, which is tragic. Mm. When I talked to her husband separately, and I don't switch information with either of them.
Right.
He said, when my autistic son was a year old, we gave him up for adoption.
Huh.
And I guess she just couldn't
that's really telling. Yeah.
Acknowledge that, yeah. So it's that different.
Yeah. Since that initial 1,001 person survey, have you done additional sort of widespread research?
Well, I never stopped, because once I got the book out, then all these readers started coming to me with stories. And so I had all of that. And then in 2005, I ran the exact same survey again, mostly online, not completely, so that they could, hit the send button and it would come right to my email instead of this envelope stuff. And so I got about 1,600 people that way. Before I cut it off, you can keep going forever. And analyze them again. And the difference between the first population and the second, I think, is interesting. And there's a factor that's in between, and that's the invention of the World Wide Web.
That is a huge development, and in a few seconds we're going to have to take a break, so I don't want to cut you off in the middle of that thought, but there's no question that just about everybody these days seems to be an amateur detective.
Yes. And
I'm sure there's been an explosion in the number of people who have contacted lost lovers from the past. But let's talk about that after the break. We'll be right back in about 2 minutes with more information and insights from our guest, psychology professor and author, Dr. Nancy Kalish. This is Jim Duzak, and this is Relationship Radio.
Ask the experts. Call toll-free right now, 1-866-472-5787. And ask our all-star team to answer your question. That's 1-866-472-5787.
Thank you for calling.
VoiceAmerica.com.
Hi, I'm Jim Duzak, host of Voice America's Relationship Radio. I'm the author of a book called Midlife Divorce and the Rebirth of Commitment. It's a book that deals not only with divorce, but with how to enhance your marriage and possibly avoid divorce. Every chapter of the book contains real-world information and advice on issues like sex, money, communication, in-law problems, and the temptation to have an affair. For those thinking of separating or filing for divorce, the book explains how to do it the right way. It also deals with the critical issues of life after divorce, including when to start dating again and how to avoid repeating the mistakes of the past. If you visit my website, www.attorneyatlove.com, you can read excerpts from all 17 chapters of the book. If you'd like to order the book, the site has direct links to Amazon.com and the other major online booksellers. And you can use the site to contact me. I'd love to hear from you.
The latest business information is made simple with the Voice America Business Network. The professionals in the business world bring you live talk radio shows featuring an array of business topics, strategies for building wealth, sales and marketing, stock trading, investing, and business technology. Voice America Business hosts are professionals in their fields and bring to the airwaves weekly business discussions that offer up-to-date information, advice, and education. The Voice America Business Network, the bottom line in business talk. Want to have behind-the-scenes access to some of the greatest minds of today? On Shift in Action, we feature leading-edge innovators who are building a more conscious, sustainable, and healthy culture. Host Stephen Dinan offers live shows with evolutionary leaders such as Deepak Chopra, Van Jones, and others who are creating new paradigms for conscious living. You can keep your finger on the pulse of the latest frontier work with our weekly transmission of Inspired Wisdom on Shift in Action, broadcast live every Tuesday at 9 a.m. Pacific Time, noon Eastern Time on Voice America. Stimulating talk
gets those synapses in the brain firing really fast.
All the time. The number one internet talk station where your opinion counts. VoiceAmerica.com.
You're listening to Relationship Radio with your host, Jim Duzak, an inside look at marriage, divorce, and midlife dating. Now, back to Jim Duzak.
Welcome back. We're talking today with psychology professor Dr. Nancy Kalish, the author of Lost and Found Lovers and the Lost Love Chronicles, which I believe you can order through her website, www.lostlovers.com. Dr. Kalish, before we went off to break, you were saying that your original research, which goes back 15 or 16 years, yielded certain results, but now with the explosion of interest in the internet and various websites such as Google and other ways of tracking people down, that not only have a lot of people tried to do the connection with lost lovers, but maybe they're doing it for different reasons or the results are different. Is that right? What's different about it now from 15 or 16 years ago?
Well, the first sample was published in 1997, 96, and the second one I read in 2005. So there was quite a time difference with the Internet explosion, as you say. Mm-hmm. Most people would assume that the difference would be that people were easier to find with the Internet. Mm-hmm. And that's not it at all. People were easy to find in the 1990s, too. When I asked people in the survey, did you have any trouble finding the person? How did you find this person? They knew where the person's elder parents were, or
friends of friends or whatever.
Right. Only 4 people out of the 1,001 said that they had a problem and used a private investigator.
Huh.
So it's not that it's easier; it's that it's mentally easier. Mm-hmm. Years ago, if the let's say middle-aged man had to go to her elder father to get her phone number,
right,
he better well be single.
Yep.
Now you're in your bedroom. It's late at night. Nobody's around, and you just type to somebody, "Hi, how are you?"
That's
from
really
the email, and what could be the harm of that?
Oh, of course, and that's what everybody says to themselves, right? Yeah, I'm just curious to see, did she ever really finish her graduate program or something like that?
Yeah. See, before you had to go through a middle person, you had to acknowledge what you were doing. Now it's a secret.
Yeah.
And most people don't tell their spouses, even if they say they're just saying hello. Mm-hmm. It's a secret.
I think you've written more than once on your website or in other places that it's really a dangerous thing for married people to even initiate any kind of contact. Isn't that right?
Yes. For the people who had these horrible ex-boyfriends and girlfriends, they probably don't want to hear from them anyway. But people know if they harbor this person in their hearts, and that's where the danger lies. So unless somebody is ready to leave that marriage right now, don't contact the lost love. You're not available.
Yeah, and really, unless both of them are ready to leave the
exactly.
marriage. Yeah. I mean,
so what happened was my sample went from this happy, single, divorced, widowed, 72% of these people stay together, to all these married people, up to 62%, most of my sample.
mm-hmm.
And most of them don't leave their marriages. At least one stays in the marriage, usually the man, by the way. And so they don't get together. They've ruined their marriages. It's just awful.
So you might say that playing detective can be playing with fire.
Yeah.
At least in the case of married people.
Yeah.
You know, I went on your website I was intending to go on just for a few minutes the other day, and I wound up staying on for probably over an hour.
Yeah.
There's so much on there, and the thing that fascinated me the most were your message board and the various threads and so forth that are there. And you know, some people, not all of them, but some people, boy, they are laying bare their souls there, aren't they?
Yes,
one
and
guy that was on, I think,
don't put the
10
details
times
on
in
the
10
web
days.
for a billion people to read, but you know, who listens? You can go on and read the members' love stories. If you want to post, there's a small charge for that per year.
Mm-hmm.
But anybody can go on and read all those members' love stories. And the thing to remember with that is that the people who join my website are a skewed sample. They're not typical. They're more in crisis than the average reunion. So
serious enough about this to pay even a modest fee is going to separate the.
Well, that's not it. I mean, if you're not married and you really are together, they'll write to me and say they're getting married, and they'll tell me their story.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't have to go right to other people.
I see.
You need the message board if you're in turmoil, you don't know what to do, you're obsessive, and you know, the companionship is helpful.
And they're writing to an audience, I don't mean you, but I'm talking about other members who are at least sympathetic.
Yes.
Who understand, quote unquote.
Yes, maybe too much.
That's right. You yourself do one-on-one consultations.
Yes, I'm not a therapist, and it's not therapy or counseling. What I do is I consider it education. I'm an educator. And I tell them what my research has found, what they can probably expect based on their story and where they are in their life.
You explain all that to them, and then they probably 2 seconds later are asking you your advice on whether they should do it or not.
Well, I don't tell them whether to leave a marriage or not.
Right.
But by explaining why they have these feelings and so on, it gives them clarity. And people leave the consultation feeling more settled because they have information. They can make a valid decision, whereas before they're just lost.
Right.
So I'd rather have a one-on-one on the phone with somebody rather than have them join the message board, because it's like the blind leading the blind sometimes. Right. You get support, but when they give advice, you know, it's not always good.
So you're a professional psychologist, but you're not a clinical psychologist, is that correct?
Right. I'm a developmental psychologist. So what I teach and research is how people change or stay the same over time. So what I'm doing with this research is I'm looking at mostly the adolescent period and first loves, teen romances, and how significant they are over time. Even for the people in the group who never wanted the reunion, they were significant. So if they wrote to me, who would want to do that? I had a horrible experience. They will also write, I learned from this, and I've never dated another person like that again. So that first love is significant, whether you liked it or not.
Yeah. And for the most part, do you use that as a definition of lost loves? In other words, if two people met they're in their 30s and they met on a cruise ship or something, and 10 years, is that still in your by your definition a lost love?
Yes, I let them define that.
Okay.
What I put out there was college researcher seeking people who loved somebody years ago, parted, and then 5 or more years later tried another relationship with that person. So I left the door open for another relationship. Might mean a friendship. Tried might mean it didn't work. I wanted to hear from everybody. I put the 5 years because I wanted them to really be done with it. They've moved on, as opposed to we had a fight, and three weeks later we're together. I didn't want that.
I see.
So that's what I did.
Mm-hmm. I can see that there could be some real differences, though, between couples who were together as teenagers and then couples who met, let's say, in their 30s or 40s. With the teenagers, you did it at a time when you really knew each other, at a time before you had, gone in different directions and started, achieving things professionally. Like you know each other from way back when.
Yes. And those reunions were more successful, and I think that was interesting, too. Mm. So if you meet somebody when you're 40, and for some reason it's not good timing, and then years later you go back to them, that works like an ordinary romance. But I included those people in my sample. I also had people, another surprise, who wrote to me, quite a number, and said, we weren't teen sweethearts. We were actually little playmates on the beach. We were 5 years old, and our mothers were friends. And so we played together. And then, somebody moves away or they go away. And then years later, when they're mature, they look at each other again, and form a marriage with that person. I have quite a number of people like that.
Yeah.
Now, that's not love somebody years ago, but they define themselves as lost loves. And they were as successful, if not more so, than the teen romances because they grew up together.
Yeah. I'm curious to know, do you ever hear from people either directly or via your message board, the people who were contacted by a lost lover but never wanted to be contacted? In other words, where they feel, violated. Does that ever come up?
Yes. Some people feel stalked. It's one thing to send a note, hi, remember me? Well, yeah, you dated for 3 years, they're going to remember you. I think that's funny. Hi, remember me, what happened to you? And if you're married, I think it's okay to write back. I would, just that once and say it was nice to hear from you.
But? Right.
Well, no, just stop it there. If the person writes again, you can say, I'm married and I really can't have this conversation.
Right.
But if you don't write back, it's a tremendous blow to this other person who might have been thinking about you for many years. But yeah, I've had women, mostly women, leave their jobs and move to a different town where the lost love is. Mm. And he's married, and he doesn't want any part of her, and he feels stalked and grows to hate her.
Boy, this is fascinating stuff. We've got to take another short break, but we'll be right back with more information and insights from our guest, professor and author, Dr. Nancy Kalish. This is Relationship Radio, and I'm Jim Duzak.
Talk. That's all we do is talk. If you'd like to talk, call us toll-free right now at 1-866-472-5787. 1-866-472-5787.
That's it.
VoiceAmerica.com.
Hi, I'm Jim Duzak, host of Voice America's Relationship Radio. I'm the author of a book called Midlife Divorce and the Rebirth of Commitment. It's a book that deals not only with divorce, but with how to enhance your marriage and possibly avoid divorce. Every chapter of the book contains real-world information and advice on issues like sex, money, communication, in-law problems, and the temptation to have an affair. For those thinking of separating or filing for divorce, the book explains how to do it the right way. It also deals with the critical issues of life after divorce, including when to start dating again and how to avoid repeating the mistakes of the past. If you visit my website, www.attorneyatlove.com, you can read excerpts from all 17 chapters of the book. If you'd like to order the book, the site has direct links to Amazon.com and the other major online booksellers. And you can use the site to contact me. I'd love to hear from you.
Are you ready to grow your business? Listen for the Independent Business Owner Show with your coach, Rick Corrado. This entertaining talk radio program will bring you the tools to help increase your business. You'll learn sales success, time management, lead generation, business development, life balance, and much more. Rick Corrado is here to help you take your business to the next level. Listen for the Independent Business Owner Show, heard live every Monday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, 8 a.m. Pacific on the Voice America Business Network.
The biggest secret about men is that they are far more complicated than we often give them credit for. Join Dr. Chris Blazina as we discover more about the secret lives of men. This is an informative and positive program exploring the various facets of men's lives, from growing up to growing old. The Secret Lives of Men with Dr. Chris Blazina is broadcast live every Tuesday afternoon at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, 2 p.m. Pacific Time on Voice America.
Streaming live, the leader in Internet talk radio, voiceamerica.com.
You're listening to Relationship Radio with your host, Jim Duzak, an inside look at marriage, divorce, and midlife dating. Now, back to Jim Duzak.
Welcome back. We're talking today with psychology professor Dr. Nancy Kalish, the author of Lost and Found Lovers and the Lost Love Chronicles. Her website is www.lostlovers.com, and I have to say, it's a very good website, and I mentioned before I've been on it a number of times and have stayed on it longer than I originally intended. How many, do you know offhand, Dr. Kalish, how many hits you get per week or per month on the site?
I think it's about 100,000.
Well, that's really something, especially when you think of the fact that this is a very specialized site, and you don't do.
Oh yes, very small.
You don't do a lot of paid advertising and things of that nature. No. Before the break, we were talking about some of the, you might say, the dark side or the dangerous side of contacting lost lovers, and one of them, or the most obvious one perhaps, is when one or both of you are married, but. Are there other situations, Doctor, where it might be a bad idea to contact a lost lover?
Well, some people don't even want to say hello. They want to heal the past. They just want the person to acknowledge that they hurt you. They want an apology. Some people want to give an apology. But there was something troubling about it the first time around. And I will say that a lot of people who contact me, let's say for the consultations, a lot of them are married, but some of them are that it wasn't working the first time, and they're trying to put this back together a second time too, and it's just not going to work.
And they certainly could be setting themselves up for not only the disappointment of having to break up the second time, but the loss of a dream.
Yes.
And that dream has probably been the thing that's kept them going all this time.
Right, and I looked to see, the grieving process, and it's about twice as long the second time as it is the first time, because first of all, it broke up. Secondly, you're older and it's hard to handle a breakup. And third, you feel like you were really stupid to even try. And a lot of people out there, including therapists, will say, boy, that was really stupid.
Well, unfortunately, people do, I think someone once said that fantasy will always trump reality, and I think so often people they forget that, particularly with these adolescent relationships, that their mind drifts back to. These are relationships that were never tested, or in many cases never tested by the day-to-day reality of married life.
That's true, and I'm glad you brought that up, because those are successful reunions, provided that they're not already married, and they're successful because they grew up together and they shared values. Mm-hmm. So if you're going to school with somebody day after day, their families, maybe you go to church or synagogue with them, and especially in the adolescent years where you're forming your identity, you're forming it with that person.
Right.
And you're forming your idea of what love is with that person. So you're very similar. So, yeah, you haven't tested it day by day, and the betrayed spouses contact me and they say, this is a fantasy, he'll be back in a week or two, and I have to tell them the truth. No, once they leave, they are okay, and they left, and it's not a fantasy.
Yeah, and this is just a pure guess, but I would think that even if they've gone that far, let's say a married person who reconnects with the other person, but then decides to stay in his marriage, at some point, the person is probably still going to be comparing his wife, his real-world wife, to this idealized image of the perfect woman who he didn't go back to, so the marriage will probably never be quite the same afterwards.
Well, the thing is, he had always compared her. She just didn't know it. He never talked about it.
Yeah,
I call this a ticking time bomb. These people don't talk about it. They may, when they're dating, share how many sexual partners they had. But if the person, is grieving for this lost love for all those years, they won't talk about it.
Yeah.
So it was always there. That didn't change. It makes it a little worse. And for women who have sex with their lost loves, the marriage won't go back together, oddly, because she feels guilty. If she were to have sex with her husband, that she would be betraying her lost love, even if both of them stay in the marriage.
You must have to I know that you do a good job on it. I'm sure you stress to people that you are not their therapist and all of that, but do you sometimes, when these really serious cases, urge people to go and get therapy, specialized help on this?
If it comes out that really what they're dealing with is old stuff from alcoholic families from the youth or something like that, yes, absolutely, I'll refer them for those issues. I only deal with the lost love stuff.
Right. It's again, we've been talking about both sides of the coin here. How great it can be and how absolutely devastating it can be.
And that's my problem, because on the one hand, I'm telling people this could be terrific, and on the other hand, I'm telling them don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
You see?
And I'm sure what they come away with is whatever they went in there with. In other words, if they were hoping that you would say go for it, they will come away with the idea that, well, Dr. Kalish told me to go for it, even though I'm sure you never say that to anyone.
Well, that did happen in one case. The betrayed wife contacted me and said that her husband showed her my book, and said he talked to me and that I told him he should leave. And I got her calmed down, but no, I don't do that.
Boy.
I do feel like I've saved some marriages because I can talk to them about what this feeling is, that it can come from the raging teenage hormones that are, part of your body now, and that it doesn't mean because you have this intense feeling that you should be with that person. Because in a lot of cases, for the people who contact me, for the people who are conflicted, usually don't belong with that person.
Is that pull, you might say, that people will have with lost love? Is it so strong that it's a bad idea for someone to even attend, let's say, a high school reunion if you know that your lost lover who's married now, let's say, is going to be there? Is that even too dangerous to get into?
It could be, and that's kind of a shame because school reunions are great. You meet up with them.
Right, I love them myself.
It doesn't help, by the way, if you bring your spouse. It's not protective of anything. You look at that other person, and that's it. You probably should stay away if you value your marriage.
Yeah, if anything, your spouse could probably read it on your face because it's pretty hard to disguise love where it exists, isn't it?
The spouses, they have a good marriage, and they just don't think anything can happen to it. So that a lot of times they'll say, let's, as a foursome, he'll bring his wife and I'll come and, we'll have dinner together.
Mm-hmm. So in all innocence, they might put themselves in this situation and have no idea where it's going to go. Right.
And it usually is innocent. They don't contact me until they're in trouble. Or happily married. I get, the aftermath.
Yeah.
And then the therapists. There have been therapists who have actually said to people, this is a fantasy. She's probably fat. She's older. She looks terrible. just go find her and you'll see that you're not right for each other. And that's not what he found at all, and it ruined his marriage.
You know, we were speaking a few moments ago about these elderly people that you read about in the newspaper who connect with each other, and
yes.
it almost always seems to be after both of them are widowed.
Yes, those are wonderful stories.
They are wonderful stories, but one thing I've always asked myself, you know, maybe I don't know, maybe it's just something about my nature. I'm always questioning things, but do you think that for all those 40 and 50 years that they were consciously thinking of that person, and I'm not saying, you know, hoping that their wife or husband would die eventually and they get back, but I mean, I'm not that cynical, but I'm just wondering, do you think there was something there all along, or did they just...
Not for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a lot of the widows had the wonderful marriages. They left the first love of their own accord and never looked back, and when he died, and if their lost love comes back, they go, you know, this is the second chance at love and life.
Yeah, it's fascinating, and I know your website has a big page of wedding pictures and other pictures of
yes, but look at what's in there also. There's a picture of a man. There's an arm kind of sticking out because for the picture he cut his wife out.
I saw that picture. I saw that, and I sort of wondered why it was like that.
If you click on it, you'll read that he was left. He had a happy marriage, and she left him for a lost love. Oh. And he wanted that side out, and I agreed with him. So they're not all happy pictures in there.
I didn't. I took a quick look at it. And
yeah.
I was thinking that's what it was.
Yeah. Well, most people who want their picture up there, it was a happy story. The betrayed spouses don't usually. But he's pretty public about what happened to him, and that's good.
Yeah. So your website and the message boards and the one-on-one consultations you do, that strictly speaking, it's not academic research, but it certainly puts your finger on the pulse of what's going on.
No, it's academic research. I've presented at conferences and published it.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Other than the books, yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any other new projects and formal research projects going on in addition to just what you're doing on the website?
Not right now. You know about the budget problems in California, and as a result of that, we have half the faculty that we had, and we have like twice the students. My classes are so large that I really don't have time right now to do any of the research.
I see. Boy. Well, that's a shame about that, but obviously the work has already been done, or much of it has anyway, and even if there's nothing new, the website continues on, and people are finding it. We have to go into another break, but I want to thank our guest, Dr. Nancy Kalish, for all her insights and information. Her website, once again, is www.lostlovers.com. Dr. Kalish, it was great having you on. Keep up the good work.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you.
You're welcome. We'll be right back.
Have you ever thought about having your own internet talk show? Well, if you said yes, then click About Us. Then click Be a Host to get more information. Or just call Jeff Spinard at 480-294-6417.
Say that again?
480-294-6417. VoiceAmerica.com.
Hi, I'm Jim Duzak, host of Voice America's Relationship Radio. I'm the author of a book called Midlife Divorce and the Rebirth of Commitment. It's a book that deals not only with divorce, but with how to enhance your marriage and possibly avoid divorce. Every chapter of the book contains real-world information and advice on issues like sex, money, communication, in-law problems, and the temptation to have an affair. For those thinking of separating or filing for divorce, the book explains how to do it the right way. It also deals with the critical issues of life after divorce, including when to start dating again and how to avoid repeating the mistakes of the past. If you visit my website, www.attorneyatlove.com, you can read excerpts from all 17 chapters of the book. If you'd like to order the book, the site has direct links to Amazon.com and the other major online booksellers. And you can use the site to contact me. I'd love to hear from you.
Total career success. What does it mean to you? Voice America presents a radio program dedicated to help you achieve your career goal. Even in times of economic uncertainty, you can achieve your financial goals. Whether you're a college grad, new in the working environment, or a top-level executive, you will benefit from the practical and proven advice on job search and career advancement. Join Ken and Cheryl Dawson every Monday at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern for Total Career Success on Voice America.
Wake up with a unique daily show. Listen for Mitchell John in the morning. Mitchell will bring you news, sports, and stock news from yesterday. You'll hear interviews from high-profile figures from the world of sports, entertainment, politics, and authors. Mitchell will talk to people throughout America. This is a show that throws right down the center. It's fun, information, and yes, even a little bit of music. Catch Mitchell John in the morning at 6 a.m. Pacific Time, Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays on Voice America, and Thursdays on the Voice America Business Network.
The Internet's number one talk station. Number one talk station. VoiceAmerica.com.
You're listening to Relationship Radio with your host, Jim Duzak, an inside look at marriage, divorce, and midlife dating. Now, back to Jim Duzak.
Welcome back. I mentioned earlier that in addition to being an author and a talk show host, I'm a lawyer. Since lawyers always love to plead their case, I call the final segment of each show my closing argument. What I try to do each week is to make my case, so to speak, on a particular relationship issue and offer some advice that you may be able to use right now. The issue I'll be discussing today is why in the dating world the perfect can be the enemy of the good. To the best of my knowledge, the great 18th century French writer Voltaire never wrote about post-divorce dating, but he did say something that I think has a lot of relevance to the subject, and that is, the perfect is the enemy of the good. Although that line has been interpreted different ways, I take it to mean that people can be so focused on achieving perfection that they miss the chance to achieve something that may be a little short of perfect, but is still very good, and definitely more within their reach. In the dating world, people are often so fixated on meeting the perfect person that they wind up with no one. This is particularly true when people start dating again after divorce or the breakup of a long-term relationship. When people are starting out fresh, they're often determined not to repeat the mistakes of the past. This is certainly understandable and can be a good thing, but it can go too far. If we become so hung up on the things we dislike about our ex that we automatically rule out anyone who even remotely resembles him, we're going to rule out a lot of potentially good people. For example, if your ex was an alcoholic, it's true that the last thing you need in your life is another alcoholic. But not everyone who enjoys a drink is an alcoholic. There obviously are millions of people who enjoy a glass or two of wine each night with no ill effects. But if you say in your online dating profile, no drinkers, please, you're not just disqualifying real alcoholics, you're also disqualifying all the responsible drinkers who may read your profile. Now, I read a lot of online profiles and personal ads, and believe me, all or nothing statements are quite common. Now, I suppose it's possible that someone could take the time to reply and say that he's not a problem drinker and that he has all the other qualities you're looking for, but why bother? It's easier to move on to the next profile and dismiss you as someone unduly hung up on that particular issue. Now, other online daters in search of perfection are not so much fixated on the negatives as they are on what I call the unrealistic positives. Their profiles are really more like wish lists to Santa. For example, the man they're seeking must be a good-looking, articulate, affectionate, high-achieving professional who loves kids and cats and is committed to social justice. Or the woman that they're seeking must be slim, toned, sexy, smart but not intimidating, accomplished but still feminine, and of course no older than 35. Whether these people realize it or not, when they write these things, they're insisting on perfection. may think that they're just describing an ideal person and that they'd be willing to compromise. But someone reading the profile sees nothing but non-negotiable demands. Even someone who is good-looking, articulate, high-achieving professional may be turned off by someone who seems to be insisting on such qualities. And keep in mind, good-looking, articulate, high-achieving professionals have plenty of options. And one of them is to try to find someone who doesn't seem picky and demanding. There's probably no such thing as a perfect person. Everyone has flaws, weaknesses, failings. But there is such a thing as someone who's perfect for you. The way to find that person, at least through an online dating search, is to describe yourself in a way that will draw him or her to you. I don't mean by lying or exaggerating, but I do mean by presenting yourself in a positive light, by appearing quietly confident and reasonably happy in your life, and by not appearing desperate, needy, self-absorbed, or shallow. Perfection is something to aspire to in a spiritual or artistic sense, but it's a mistake to demand it in other people. By the way, I'm not saying that by insisting on perfection that you should settle for less than you deserve. There's a difference between perfection and settling. Settling for someone implies that he's wrong for you in just about every meaningful way, but that you're probably not going to do much better, so you may as well take this one. What I'm talking about is not settling, but making an intelligent compromise. An intelligent compromise means that the person is not necessarily what you had in mind, but he's so appealing in so many ways that he's caused you to rethink your notion of what your ideal partner is. And that's a good thing, because it's a waste of time to visualize your ideal partner ahead of time. Ideal partners come in all shapes and sizes, literally and figuratively. As I said before, every human being has limitations and imperfections, but the key is to distinguish between those limitations that are relatively superficial and those that are truly deal breakers. So, don't settle, but at the same time, don't be afraid to make an intelligent compromise. In fact, there's probably an intelligent compromise out there somewhere who would be just right for you. Before we wrap up, I'd like to tell you about next week's guest. Next Friday, April 24th, our guest will be Ronnie Ann Ryan. Ronnie is a full-time dating coach and workshop leader in Connecticut who works primarily with women over 40. She herself got married for the first time at age 41, so she knows firsthand the ups and downs of midlife dating. I've been reading her monthly newsletters for the past 2 or 3 years, and I've always been impressed by Ronnie's optimism, her energy, and her imaginative ideas. And by the way, even if you're a man, you'll want to tune in, because most of Ronnie's advice applies to men as well as women. That's next Friday, April 24th, here on Relationship Radio. I wanted to mention one other thing before we wrap up. For those of you in book clubs, particularly book clubs that read nonfiction books, I want to extend a special offer. If your club chooses my book, Midlife Divorce and the Rebirth of Commitment, as your book of the month, I'll be happy to appear by telephone at your meeting and speak to the members either individually or if you have a speakerphone set up, we'll do it that way. And if your club meets anywhere in southern Arizona, where I live, I'll appear in person. Hey, will Dr. Phil or Dr. Laura do that? I don't think so. Anyway, just email me and we'll work out the details. And my email address, as I said at the beginning of the show, is jim@attorneyatlove.com, ATTORNEYATLOVE.com. And www.attorneyatlove just happens to be my website, so please go on my website too. So anyway, the next show, Ronnie Ann Ryan on April 24th. Until then, have a great weekend and spread some love around. I'm Jim Duzak. Bye for now.
Thanks again for joining us this week on Relationship Radio with Jim Duzak. Please join us again next Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, 2 p.m. Pacific Time on Voice America. Have a great weekend.
Thanks again for listening to the preceding program, brought to you on the Voice America Variety Channel. For more information about our network and to check out additional show hosts and topics of interest, please visit voiceamericavariety.com. The Voice America Talk Radio Network is the worldwide leader.